and with me are my two regular panelists. Dear Daniel,
Yo, hey, hi.
how are you, Daniel?
I've been good. Not so good that was point in time, but getting better.
What you been
Yeah.
up to? You rebranded your Malaysia entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah, so Entrepreneurs NY have this branding issue. Our Twitter handle is something else. Our Facebook, YouTube, all were a different name. And a lot of people do not know how to spell entrepreneurs, as you guys know in SG Entrepreneurs. So, yeah, we decided to call it Next Up Asia.
Yeah. So now it's basically Next Up Asia, right? Everything is going towards Asia. But there's a lot of name changes going on lately as well. Like, I own sgentrepreneurs.com now. It's called sg.io. E27 has changed to e27.co, Everybody's changing, rebranding these days, basically.
Well, no KPI is still no KPI, so that's the thing.
It is. We did not experience any rebranding.
Yeah, but your brand is always there, Smithy. So you don't need to rebuild a brand.
I didn't rebrand. But maybe I need to. Maybe that's an exercise. It's something I need to do. Never thought about it, actually.
So what have you been up to, Ren, Speedy?
Just busier than crud. Spool, kid. That's about it.
Okay.
It's all good. And
so how's school going? Yeah.
Spool is going good. We just launched Android last week. That's kind of been the big thing we're working on for a while. So now we have the web, Facebook, iOS, and Android.
Wow.
So lots of clients to juggle, lots of fun stuff to build. And we're moving, it's a slow build. There's a lot of things to have to get ready, but it's happening.
So anything interesting in your developer experience now that you support so many platforms?
It's hard. I think we're really learning how, the way you kind of build all these things or somehow manage it is pretty important. Like, the strength of APIs and doing mobile web things, and it's juggling it. So, largely all this stuff is 1.0. We have a long ways to go, but now we have everything out there. We're working on some other stuff still. You can imagine there's still some platforms we haven't gotten to. But yeah, there's a lot of learning. There's even thoughts of pivoting certain areas to kind of take advantage of what we learned. So, but it's tough work. I would say that iOS is easier to get out there. I'm kind of liking the Google Play environment better, to be honest with you. So that's kind of a long story, but I wrote about it a little bit. I mean, I think building for iOS is easier and you can build cooler apps, but I think, Google is kind of winning when it comes to openness. I know that term's overused, but you can use their payment model to kind of do whatever you want, which you can't with Apple. And I love how you can go to the Play Store and edit something or fix something and you just publish it. You don't have to wait for somebody to get it to you, right?
Yeah.
So, cool, I think. So,
okay.
It's all different.
So maybe we should probably start off today by the biggest conversation that we are supposed to have tonight, which is actually what got us all back into the panel today, right? So, about Jon's article. So, for all you do not know, Jon Russell, the guy one of the Asian correspondents.
He's trying to get in right now, I think.
He's trying to get in? I'm trying to invite him, though.
He said the link isn't working for him. So I sent him a new one. Hopefully he's inbound.
I'm trying to get him to here. Then he can tell us the whole story.
Come, Jon. Come. Anyway, keep going. Hopefully he gets in.
Okay, so while I'm still inviting him, so the story is that Jon wrote this article about the 4 issues that kind of deals with the Southeast Asia startup ecosystem, and he mentioned 4 issues, right?
Yes.
So the first issue was risk aversion, which is basically saying that starting companies are very difficult, and a lot of people are concerned about how much they earn, etc., working for a big company. The second is the fear of failure.
Yeah, and I think for anybody who, we should mention where to find this stuff. So it's inside the noodlebowl.com.
Correct. Which is his blog, and he got a subtle invitation. Smithy,
Well, we don't have to mention that. Let's not pump him up too much.
Okay, that's right. And then there is the fear of failure, which is related to the sort of risk aversion. And then the lack of big firm presence, which I think, Smithy, you have some thoughts on it. We can follow on that. And the last is the immature ecosystem, basically. Yep.
I think it's also really funny because the folks at E27 also...
There he is.
There he is. Hey, John, we're just talking about your article.
Can you hear us?
Hello, John.
I think his sound's off.
Yeah.
Hey, John, sometimes the mute's on. You see the red mic up at the top?
Correct.
For some reason, mine defaulted to mute.
Yeah,
Yes.
we can hear you now. Hey,
Yeah.
John.
You can
Now?
turn off your video if you want. We're just doing audio.
Yeah.
I want to do video. Oh, and I even put on some clothes as well.
Thank God.
How do I turn off the video? I'm such an amateur when it comes to...
You see at the top, there's a camera thing by the mic. You can turn off the camera, I think.
Ah, right.
Yeah.
All right. Okay,
Cool.
done.
Cool.
And we hear you.
So-
Welcome, John.
Welcome,
What did I
John.
miss? What have I
So, John, we don't want to
Guys.
pump you up too much, but we were just admiring your ability to be
Inflating
unsubtle.
me, right? Oh, God. Is it really that big a deal? I don't know. I mean, lots of people are on that kind of...
I'm not on subtle.
Not lots of people in Asia. How many?
Well, I think, yeah, I'm not sure about Asia. I think it's saying that they're trying to encourage more people to come on from Asia.
Yeah.
So,
Really?
I mean, I know a few people. I know some, I know Bernard that you're quite keen to get on.
Yeah,
So I'm pretty sure that.
they're not interested in me, so no.
I don't know. Have you heard anything back yet? Because I mean,
No.
when I applied, I had to I followed up like about 3 or 4 weeks later. So.
Yep.
I think Dustin's probably quite busy to say the least. So it's probably worth like bothering him with more emails, I guess. But I mean, I know that he's quite keen to have some more people on from Asia anyway. From the brief from the emails that I've got from him. So
Well, it's cool that you're on it. You're
I'll say that
representing us.
working for the Next Web is obviously a much bigger deal than being on there. So
Okay. So
You
John,
don't have to rub it in us,
yeah.
well, no, just to be
Okay.
clear, because everyone's going on about it. So I just want to kind of say like, oh yeah.
Okay. Shall we get to the main meat of the conversation, because you are actually the reason why
Oh,
we
that
are.
wasn't the meat?
Well, subtle. We all got it. Yeah.
I'm sure Bernard will manufacture a way to get in soon. So
No,
Sure you're
I'm
gonna
quite
do me,
happy
right?
with medium actually at the moment.
He's already at medium. He's already kind of badmouthed them, so of course they're not going to let him in now.
I never badmouthed them. I just said I didn't get the subtle invite. Okay.
oh, by the way,
You're using the fake copy template. If you've read anything by Dustin Curtis, you'll know that pisses him off to no end.
Too bad, because I was just testing the WordPress theme up, right? I'm a hacker, so yeah.
well, by the way, just want to add, I love Medium a lot. Seems to be very interesting.
Yeah. I thought it was a nicer platform, by the way.
Okay, digression.
Okay, digression. We should get back to the conversation. Are we going to get back to the conversation or not?
Yes, sorry.
Is it?
Okay. Rather than me giving the 4 reasons, why don't John, you start off? What inspired you to write the article about the 4 biggest issues of Southeast Asia's startup ecosystem?
Okay, cool. Well, I guess it's probably worth pointing out from the start that these aren't the only 4, right? I mean, I think that we all know there's quite a few kind of barriers that are kind of going on. But I guess, I mean, I've spoken to a couple of founders during the week about things they were doing, and a couple of VCs before as well, and it just kind of got me thinking. And I'm kind of actually it's quite cool because I wrote it in about 10 minutes. Well, not 10 minutes, maybe like 15, 20 minutes, but it was very, very quick. And I never thought that, people would actually read it and be interested in it. So it's obviously good that people are interested in, Southeast Asia and what's going on. And I guess, so the 4 things were, if I can remember actually, I think, was to do with, one of them was to do with being, people in the region being very averse to taking risks, which I think is one thing that certainly always hearing about. Obviously, having not run a startup myself and not being Asian, it's hard for me to give a a strong perspective on that. But in terms of people I speak to, that's something that we hear a lot about. People prefer to work for big companies. There's the kind of status symbol of working for a big company. There's probably also a lot of things. It's to do with money as well. So these guys are probably going to earn more money working for a big firm than they are at a small firm. Obviously, that makes a big difference. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts about that at all.
No, I totally agree. I think the risk aversion thing is a big deal.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. So totally agree with the points. Continue.
I better actually pull it up now. I can't even remember.
No, but what kind of? I guess more than the points, what kicked you off to wanting to write this? Because is it you see a lot of increased activity? Obviously, you get a lot of pitches. People come through town and talk to you. Is it that you see the kind of lots more activity, but you're kind of saying these are the things that you think are kind of holding it back? Is that what kind of started?
I think it's easy. I think people don't. I mean, a lot of people are quite keen on Southeast Asia at the moment. It's a market that certainly the US and I know obviously others in Asia, like in Japan in particular, are very keen on. But I guess there's a lack of understanding as to exactly what are the big hurdles here, and it's very easy. People always think of Asia as being one place, and it really isn't. And even in Southeast Asia itself, there's lots of diversity and different kind of cultures. And I think that people don't really understand what is going on here. Everyone still thinks that Singapore is the only place in Southeast Asia where anything happens in terms of startups and tech. And I guess I mean, so my blog is just my own personal stuff that things that I wouldn't really be able to write on the next web because they're just random thoughts. So it wasn't really about inspiring anybody. It was just me writing some random stuff down. And yeah, I guess it's really to do with the fact that people don't really understand the ecosystem here, and they don't really understand what's going on. And I think also that it's a very unique region, because we don't really have our own companies here that have come through like they have in Korea, Japan, and China, and even India to a certain extent too. So it's very much a fragmented and very different place here. And I think it's really fascinating to see the kind of growth that's happening, but it's a completely different paradigm to anywhere else.
I mean, what was the biggest misconception when, as a foreigner looking at Southeast Asia, I mean, a lot of the people will just look at Singapore and Indonesia as a whole market. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think definitely with Singapore, it's definitely. I mean, obviously, there are reasons for Singapore to be, a big focus. If you're foreign, obviously it's where most of the money is. But in terms of the actual market, I mean, it's very, very small. And compared to obviously Indonesia has 240 million odd people in it, and there are lots of countries that have huge populations compared to Singapore. So I think I just love the actual dynamic in Southeast Asia is so different to anywhere else. I mean, you've got one country where all the money is, and then you've got all these other different markets where all the users are, and some startups kind of coming out here and there. And I just love the way that it's such a fresh way of doing things.
But that's the thing, you see. But I actually don't think that Singapore is really leading, because I know that the current craze is in Thailand, because there's a lot of events happening in Thailand. It's like
I think Thailand. Okay,
a couple of months ago was Philippines, and then a couple of months ago was Indonesia. It's been the so-called the big markets argument is circling around the region. But I've been taking more meetings than usual. And what I noticed when I talk to a US investor or entrepreneur or whatever, or a European investor as well, the sense is that Singapore is just like this gateway. I'm just going to come in, pop by through here. I'm going to travel around the region and etc. I will never see it as a serious market, and it doesn't matter what things here are. The hot stuff is in Indonesia. The hot stuff is in Thailand. The hot stuff is in Philippines because they have economies.
Yeah, I'm not too sure about Philippines and Thailand, for example, but I think it's really a flavor of the month kind of thing, especially for investors.
Yeah.
Thailand seems to be really popular for the past 6 to 9 months, and it was Philippines a while back, but
yeah,
I mean, there's 1 or 2 big, really interesting startups in the Philippines, in my opinion. But then again, most of the investors will just stop at Singapore, and then they won't explore other regions like way later into the when they are in Singapore.
Sure,
No,
but I think, no one really starts talking about the ugly fundamentals that nobody likes to talk about. And I know I've had these conversations with John, and John knows it because he's been in Thailand. Like, these ecosystems are only going to happen with lots of different international people. And I don't mean expats coming to Asia, but just all of these people mixing together, right?
Yep.
And people forget that, Singapore still got something all these people don't have, which has got very competitive tax rates. It's got places for expats to be able to hang their residency hat. It's got the schooling systems. It's got things to make, and I met with some people last week. They actually want to get to the Indonesian market. They want to get to the Thai market. They're not going to put their companies there. They're not going to put their executives there. And they're not going to put any IP there. And they might not even create companies there. And if you look at all these people that are in the region, most of them are natives. And the natives have easier ways of starting companies. But I still think Singapore has something over all these people, and these dirty little things are not talked about that much because it gets people into trouble, right?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I
Agree.
with that. And you want to add to the point, right? I see that all the regional corporations, so-called in the Southeast Asia, are not even stepping up at all. They're trying to do everything like paying for the cheap. They think that they have a lot of money, but they're just being cheap. In the way
because there's still this
people and companies, you see.
There's still perspective about Asia as being cheap, and it's not about the talent. It's like, hey, I got enough money to throw into my internal staff to go and launch something similar or do something. And if you look at the exits in Indonesia, for example, a big dirty secret of the exits in Indonesia is mostly acquiring talent. It's not really acquiring companies or ideas.
Yeah, but you see, the problem at the moment as sometimes we all like to criticize our friends at Rocket Internet, but they're actually paying the premium for the dollar because they are actually making it competitive for the market
Totally agree. But then, like Gwen and I always have the same point that it's so easy for a B grade, B2C grade entrepreneurs to start a business now, because there's so many Series A. Not Series A, but so many seed funded. Talent is always an issue.
That's no different than Silicon Valley or anywhere else. It's kind of easy money everywhere right now. It's just now come here, and it wasn't here before, right?
No, but the Series A is actually losing out. There's non-existent.
Doesn't
exist.
Doesn't exist. No, I mean, I think your post today, Bernard, was spot on. I mean, it just doesn't exist. Does it? There's a huge gap. It's completely different. I think that's the reason why. I mean, I wasn't actually talking about, why Singapore is important, why it needs to be important. I was just talking about the fact that there's 600 million people living in this region, and yet, can you name any big startups from here? Not really. So I guess my point was really just to kind of give some color about what's happening here.
MOL.
And rather than to say like, oh, Singapore is more important or Indonesia more important, because I think that as a whole, they each have their own importance in terms of how the market works.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a hugely complicated market. I think it's more about just kind of explaining, how it's very different here to it is in Silicon Valley or the UK or anywhere else, I guess.
It's a bit like European market, right, in a way, because John, I spent a long time in Europe. It feels the same way like when I'm back in Southeast Asia, where the languages and the culture fragments the system, and not to mention things like there's more practical, like unified currency, things like payment systems, like from say Singapore to Malaysia to Thailand, or from Thailand to Indonesia. All these intermingle. These are the things that people don't want to talk about, like how difficult is the logistics, how difficult is the pay transactions across the region. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a big issue that I'm always facing in terms of payment across the region anyway.
Yeah.
But
either way, every startup has that issue, right? About
sure, but it's not impossible. I don't. Sometimes I think everybody uses that as like, hey, you can't get anything done because you can't do it. You can. It's just not clean and easy and neat and tidy like it is in the States. But I don't think it's impossible. But
no, I don't think it's impossible.
No, it's not impossible. Just use PayPal and just use WorldPay, and if there is another whatever system, just try. You just have to bear with the cost, and then you try to navigate around. There are companies who manage to do that. A lot of e-commerce companies in Southeast Asia are doing very well.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Agreed. So in your list, I think to add to what maybe people didn't understand, my thing on this thing was when you talk about the big companies being here, my thing that I just noticed, because I always felt it was different in the Valley, and it doesn't seem to happen here, is you really can't get any local help here. And I know some people can because they know somebody or their friend works at something or their friend's the ex-employee or whatever. But what I find is like you take the big ecosystem players, and to not name names, I'll just name them all. You got your Facebooks, your Googles, your Apples, your Yahoos, and they're all here. But none of them are really here to provide any sort of local product / support capability. They're only here, to take money, to be honest, right? And they all take money, but there's nobody here to help you, right? And that's the part that really, apart from Amazon, who I think has grown a lot in the region and is really...
Yes, agreed.
My hat's off to them. They've put money here. They've put bodies here. You can actually get help at very deep levels with AWS right here in Singapore. And apart from maybe Apple a little bit, because they got a couple good developer support guys, you can't get that level of depth with any of the other players here. And it's always like, yeah, we're going to get a guy here, but they haven't moved here yet. So he wants to move to Singapore. So you can talk to him in Palo Alto. And, they give you these things of like, can you take a call at 1 in the morning? And you're like, really? Like, I'm kind of in bed at 1 in the morning if you don't mind, right? Like,
Yeah.
So like, that's the part that, I think until that changes, I think all of us kind of have a handicap compared to other ecosystems like Europe or America, where those people actually have the teams there on the ground helping people. So I kind of feel like Southeast Asia has this inherent handicap, which is kind of a bummer, right?
I'll give you another example of a good guy besides Amazon, Microsoft. They host all the hackathons. They do all the things that Google in US is doing, but nobody appreciates what they do.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you on most levels. The only thing that because I'm actually trying to deal with them, is you kind of got to like cut through almost a veneer of enterprise sales before you can get to the meat. So, and unfortunately, because that's still the way they're architected as a company. I agree if you can cut through it and you finally get people calling you back and they understand what you're doing. They actually have a lot of people here and they're pretty technically fluent and they do want to help. But it's always like you got to kind of cut through almost a sales cycle first. Where like with Amazon, there is none of that. It's all self-service, right?
Yeah, correct.
But for me, the region has this just natural handicap to where we don't get the kind of connectivity to top people that other core regions do, and that's just going to be a struggle, right?
And I think that's a really interesting point as well, because I mean, I think you're in a position where, having worked in the US, you can understand how it should work. But other people who are here, this is the first time perhaps that they're starting a company, or they've only ever been here, and they wouldn't actually understand that these companies are, that these companies have people that do go and sit with us and offer them some help, and actually work with them. So it's not just the fact that we don't have it here; it's that no one actually knows that that's how it can be. So it's that's quite a key thing as well, I think.
Yeah, and I don't know if it really changes anytime soon. I think it's only going to come with slow evolution, right? And it's one of those things that like it kind of would be helpful. Sure, people are going to exist without it and they'll get by, but you could imagine the difference it would make, right?
Well, I have a theory against this, actually. I have a theory on it, and I actually want to share this theory now because I didn't write it in my post. I didn't elaborate it a lot. If you look at the top companies in East Asia, I'm talking about the Japan, Korea, and China. You have the Baidus, you have the Samsungs, you have the Mixies or Sonys and whatever. They have some kind of counterbalance forces against these big companies. Like, for example, Google has to fight in the China market, so they tend to be more aggressive against this. Like in this market, these guys don't have resistance. And that's why they treat it more like a sales and marketing market and not bother to service it. Whereas in those markets,
there's no competition to them. Yeah.
Correct. I don't know. I've been having this discussions with a couple of people as well, and I think that it's this whole China is this big freaking market. Let's go and eat it, and then they realized they couldn't swallow it, and then but they still continue hanging there like this person just continues.
I mean, the fact is Southeast Asia is generally low priority. It's only up to quite recently. there's so much buzz around Southeast Asia. I think there was a video that Dave McClure mentioned about he's looking to invest more in Southeast Asia, especially Indonesia. Yeah, it's really low priority in a lot of companies' lists.
But it is, because I think the hard reality is the revenue is much smaller, right? It's a lot of people, but having worked at Yahoo, like if you see what you think Indonesia creates, it's really like a rounding error to one country in Europe, right? I mean, and that's not going to change really quick, right? And I also think that in some markets we see this a little bit, but you could use this, piracy is so well supported in Southeast Asia, almost worshipped, that a lot of business models here are going to have a hard time getting over that wall, right? So the revenue models here, even cooking, hot as can be, aren't near as big as other markets, right? So you kind of got to realize that's the fact. But I think, like John says, there's just a lot of people, and the opportunity is massive, right? Someday.
Yes.
And I think you can't start on it when you think it's suddenly massive. You got to kind of take a chance before it gets there, right?
Yeah, and I want to bring to Dave's point again, because he's like looking at like what's within 5 years, what's within 10 years down the road, instead of like what's going on right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you see, here's the thing. A lot of people seems to neglect the fact is that if you look at the top social media stuff like Facebook, Twitter, after US, the largest number of users are coming from Southeast Asia. They're just using this like some kind of traffic generator, but they don't service the market itself, basically. It's really funny because they know that all the users are coming from this market, but they still want to haul themselves to Korea, Japan, and China, who they don't like them anyway.
Do you see Kylie's post about Southeast Asia?
Which one?
Hold on, let me just share the link.
So John, you I know you can't disclose numbers, but I was curious as like someone who does a publication and like when you write stuff about the region, do you find that the traffic or like the interest level is pretty high, or do you also see that this is actually a pretty small market, and even though you write about it, it doesn't generate the kind of traffic that, say, an article about America or Europe might?
Well, I mean, it really does. It depends what we're doing, I guess. But I mean, yeah, in general, I mean, Asia is our third audience in terms of size. I mean, I think the US is ahead of Europe these days, and Asia is just behind. I mean, but we deliberately don't write about stories that are too local. We try to write about stuff that, even if you're based in the US or Europe and you're reading about Asia, then you would be interested in it in some shape or form. So we don't go too local in terms of country specific stuff, unless it's like China, Japan, or potentially in Indonesia or other kind of sizable markets.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think the kind of bigger stuff that I've written about Southeast Asia, like the more feature led stuff, has been pretty well received. I mean, I've got like kind of follow-ups from people and other people in the valley and stuff who want to be connected with people have kind of gone in touch. And that's the way I would measure it, really, because it's not always about numbers. Often it's about quality over quantity. And
Sure.
so if that is being read by people who are in the US, then and involved in tech, then that's pretty good. But I mean, definitely the kind of feedback is that Southeast Asia is a market that is interesting, right? But it's not a market that they have to be in at the moment. So it's kind of it's like one foot for the future that they're looking at, but they're not going ahead and like steaming money in and bringing people over in boats. So I guess it's the kind of first step to that, right?
Yep. Makes sense. Yeah, and I think the thing that I had written about a couple of weeks ago, and it even kicked out some of these earlier conversations you and I, is I just noticed, being here for the years that I have, that the kind of people inquiring about the region and actually passing through the region and looking at opportunities are of kind of a higher, more serious quality than I've ever seen before. Now, some of that's just maybe part of the hype cycle, but it's kind of what I noticed as like, hey, I can't believe so-and-so's here looking at the region. And it was somebody that, wouldn't have done that a couple years ago, right? And that's the part that felt different for me than in past years. Whether or not, we still don't have Series A and we don't have exits, I get all that. The kind of traffic quality of people inquiring is of a better level than I've seen.
Hey, But then let me ask you, Smithy, do you think that because of the traffic level is increasing, there's going to be another opportunity, like just acquiring things from here on the cheap and then sell it back to the US at 10 times the price?
You mean like
Possible. I just don't know. Like, is it really that cheap? And is it? And I think that like, how do you do that to where Because what you see a lot happening here, no offense, is somebody cloning something and putting a regional model around it, right? Like, why would anybody want that, right? So there has to be something that gets created here or built here or somehow devised here that is different than other things, right? And
I mean,
I don't know if we're set up to do that yet because we just don't quite have the depth and like the plane. It easy and quick.
Right.
Hi, sorry about that. I don't know if you heard. There's a load of noise in the background of my house.
Yeah, that's right.
Sorry.
Yep. So,
but I see what you're saying. I mean, you're saying like, do these ecosystems create a model to where there's things that you can get here and acquire, whether they be teams or product, and then use them for bigger attribution or push them over to the States and they become products. I've always felt like that's interesting and like it's possible, and some of us have had those ideas. I haven't really seen it happen yet because like generally like what you said, Bernard, they're acqui-hires or they're people that got some team and they integrated it. You really haven't seen something that says, hey, I bought product whatever that was this regional thing, and we're integrating it into Facebook, Google, Yahoo, whatever, and it's now a play, and look where it came from. Like, is it happening? I don't see it right now, right?
But isn't Octozen was one of those examples because Octozen was a very clear example of acquisition because they have technologies of scraping databases of any other social networks. That's why Facebook bought them.
So Octozen was actually a blocking maneuver. Basically, it was a defensive maneuver because So and when they acquire Octozen, it's really for cheap and just buying it to prevent other social network to go up. So what they did is now, I think the Facebook office in Malaysia, that the Singapore office denies that it's actually a Facebook office in Malaysia, is about 10 people. So mostly focus on growth hacking. Mostly focus on how to grow the user base and getting Facebook on more channels.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean,
but this is really just an outlier at the moment. I mean, if you look at all you can take Groupon for example. The same thing of buying local Groupon clones, Groupon and Living Social and etc.
Well, what's the very latest one? This not file sharing, or what was it?
Gridblaze.
Gridblaze, yes.
Yeah, that was an interesting one because they really wouldn't. I mean, that was completely hushed up. Like, tried very hard to get information. Like,
well, because I think isn't that story hard? Because they're basically saying they're shutting it down, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which doesn't sound like to me. It means they're taking some product and moving into. It sounds kind of like an acqui-hire, like they bought some people. And
essentially, what happened is they had a patent that the company in the US wanted the patent, and that's basically as I understand it. And they bought the technology, and they bought the patent. And that's it. There was no like staff transfer. I mean, the staff are helping them and do a handover for like 6 months, but it was like the deal was for the technology and for the patent purely.
Yeah, because the company is so new, and I think total time of the company is about less than a year. So
yeah, I think so. About 1 year old. Yeah.
But the return looks pretty good. I mean, other than maybe what customers think, which is they kind of got something shut down, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of brutal. Interesting. But I think like we can all agree, it's continues to grow, all this stuff. I think that like Bernard kind of correctly assesses the Series A glut, as we call it, which I don't, I feel in my heart of hearts it'll change, and I know people wanting to make the change, but until it happens, we can't say anything, right, because it hasn't happened.
Okay.
I think that, like, I'm always surprised that, with the way the government, I've always said this before, kind of stokes the flames, that they don't stoke the exits as a way of kind of pulling things along faster, but there just doesn't seem to be that mentality. But sometimes if you look at the way Singtel operates, it's almost like what it feels like, right?
Yeah.
They bought a lot of things, right?
No, but Singtel bought a lot of things from outside at a higher price compared to the locals. If you
True.
really look at all the acquisitions and I actually looked at the data, we have some internal data in SG that we're looking at the acquisitions itself. We notice
Yeah.
that there's actually a scale difference between the US Europe acquisitions versus the Asian acquisitions.
Oh, of course.
And the cost is and that particular cost is because they can buy it cheap. I think they are getting it basically. Yeah.
I guess the difference though is that when they're buying companies that aren't based in Asia, they're buying them for the tech purely. Like they're buying them, because they are doing something that's in terms of tech is quite different. Whereas in Asia, they're buying them for the service reach, for the kind of end product, like to be in various different markets.
Yeah.
So I guess if you're paying for tech, you're gonna have to pay a bit more, aren't you? Really?
Not really, not necessary. You can always still buy it cheap, and you can still whatever.
Right.
If you have a significant competitor, you know that in the early days, that not Singtel but SPH went to buy search engine clones against Google, and then they tried to morph it into their own internal unit, and they couldn't do anything with it, and they lose a lot of money as a result of that.
Yeah, but SPH has not bought any, which is a Singapore publishing house. They have not bought anything much for the past couple of years. I think the last big purchase was actually games. There was a games magazine or something.
Yeah, the reason is because the CEO is very afraid of digital.
Yeah, just because they got burned. A lot of
No. They made a lot of money with Hardware Zone.
They made a lot of money, however. But I mean, a lot of digital stuff. A lot of companies got burned, but then that's why they are not in the game anymore during the first .com bubble. Okay. Anyhow, do you want to wrap this up, or how do you
Wrap it up?
Yeah.
I just want to ask one thing, as this is like sort of technically the first official recording of the year. Any interesting companies are you guys looking at?
Besides my own? Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm kidding.
I can always pick that for you, Smithy.
Now I can't say. The one thing I've been pleasantly surprised is we've had the capability lately of talking to a few of these. I wouldn't call them companies, but they're actually technology kind of arms that are funded by the government that are supposed to help local startups. And I have always heard that they're out there supposed to help us, and I've never been able to connect the dots. And we finally connected the dots to one of them, and I was pleasantly surprised that they're almost like building stuff and giving it to the startups for free, because that's how they want to support the startups, and it's actually some pretty cool things. So this is something, that I can kind of chalk up to Singapore, that, for sure there's no government agency running around in Thailand building some cool tech and handing it to a startup. I can almost bet the farm, right?
Which agency are these people?
Sorry, can you just give me a load? I haven't heard of them anyway.
Yeah, I'm so curious now.
They're like, I think one of them's called like IIPL or something. And,
that's an investment.
Well, no, sorry, it's not them. I just had meetings with them, and then I realized I used their name. I'm gonna find it for you. Keep talking.
No worries. So for me, it's actually this company in Malaysia. I think they have recently expanded to Thailand and Indonesia. It's called SoftLayer. Basically, they're a backend solution provider for mobile payment, which is actually quite interesting. So.
Yeah, they seem to be quite cool actually. I'm meant to be talking to them because obviously you put me in contact with them.
Oh yeah, I did.
I've not had a chance to chat to them yet.
Okay.
But hopefully I should do at some point this.
Totally forgotten about that. I think the reason I hooked them up with you is because they were in Thailand for Kasikorn Bank, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. They were indeed.
They partnered with Kasik. Sorry,
they did. I mean, that would have been like. I mean, that is obviously a big deal anyway. But it's not that they're not the first people to do that. So I mean, that's happening a lot more now in Thailand. Thanks to partnering with startups.
I think recently, if I'm not mistaken, Visa or MasterCard actually did a list of companies that are around the world that actually have the standards of secure mobile payment, and they are one of the companies featured in it. if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Visa did their. They didn't include a lot of companies weren't on there, but they were there with like Square and Elevon and some other guys on there too. So yeah, that was pretty cool for them.
And a Malaysian startup. What about you, Bernard?
I'm looking at a company by Darius Chung, who formerly got his company 10Cube acquired by McAfee, called BillPin.
Yep, I'm using it now.
So you use that to split bills, is that the case?
I use that for my poker games, actually.
Interesting. I don't think that's quite what he had in mind.
Yeah, I don't think so, but yeah.
So Bernard, the thing is the Institute for Infocom Research.
I swear. Yeah, I almost worked for them, you know. If I didn't.
But it's pleasantly surprising. They're actually like writing code and building things that are quite useful, and then they say, here it is at some very favorable terms, and it's cool. I mean, it's what you kind of would expect given what Singapore says is supposed to be happening here, but sometimes is hard to find.
No, they are a group of good guys. There are some very successful startups that came out from Infocom Research. One of them, I2R,
I think is what.
I2R. It's called I2R.
They're the guys that partnered with Baidu, right?
Yep.
I believe correct.
They have the Baidu Research Center, and they also spin up very successful startups as well. One of them is the one that does with 2 USBs authentication. I keep forgetting. iTwin, yes, which was
iTwin, which is also quite an interesting company.
Yeah, they highly encourage innovation, and they actually have a very different mandate. Like, you know, Research Institute always tries to keep their talent, but what they do is that they want to spin them up into starting businesses.
Yeah, and they actually want to like measure. One of the things that they were explaining to us is they want to measure success by how many of the startups that are in Singapore actually use some of their stuff.
I should check it out.
Yeah, which is kind of cool, right? Because we all need the help, and you know, we've been pretty shocked at a few of the things they're willing to kind of hand over. Like, it's cool stuff.
Okay. Well, what about yourself, John? Anything?
Always tons, right? Tons. I guess I'm more interested in kind of accelerators, because I'm seeing lots more of those popping up across Asia. You know, obviously, you know, last year JFDI Asia was the kind of the big thing in Southeast Asia, and we're kind of noticing a lot more of those things happening in like China and India and other kind of countries too. So and these guys are bringing really like fresh, very very new companies to the market, and I think that's really quite cool, because I mean, I hadn't ever really noticed that happening in such a large number previously. So
okay, so
there's a new one here, right? James Chan's got his rolling up, I guess.
Yeah.
Rolling up? Seriously?
Yeah, he's going to do something like Dog Patch, right? Dog Patch.
Silicon Straits, isn't that what he's called?
Yeah, Silicon Straits, correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, isn't that something that we coined?
I think that was his site.
He was the owner, actually. Now we know who the guy behind.
Because that's his site. That's his URL.
Yeah, but check the dates. We mentioned Silicon Straits way earlier before the site came up. So
I agree with you. I don't think he'll give us the.
Yeah.
I don't think he'll give us the
end of last year, right? Silicon Straits. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's another example, and I guess it's really nice because it's all very early stage stuff, and I guess the more young companies that are out there in the market, then the more chances are that some of them are going to do well. And also, I guess lots more of them are looking at regional rather than just focusing on one country. So you know, they're looking to kind of break more than one market, which is obviously good as well, because you know, that's how you build a really big company in this region, is going from day one, or almost, you know, looking at conquering more than one market. So I think that's pretty cool. That's kind of my quite a lame answer, but all of them, I guess.
And John, are you going to get the next web to do like an Asia conference soon? Is that in the works?
It's been talked about. I mean, there's no plan at the moment.
So do we all just need to start bombarding Matthew on Twitter?
You could do. I mean, it's definitely something that we've been keen on for a while. I mean, even prior to me joining. So, So I mean, I think definitely it's going to happen at some point. But
whatever it is, there's going to be Geeks on the Plane in Southeast Asia sometime middle of the year.
Yeah.
And
Why am I
Yes.
not privy to this information?
That's
I'm
already
telling you
on their
now.
site, isn't it? It's on their site. It's down as being TBC like June, July time, I think.
I
Yeah,
think
June,
they're
July
coming
time.
during the echelon. So
Yes, exactly. So they have confirmed Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore. And
Nice.
there should be one or two more countries in the picture. So I'll keep you guys posted as we
Probably
talk.
Burma and Cambodia.
Okay.
I'm kidding.
I have some gossip about them, but yeah, we'll keep that off air.
okay.
Cool.
Okay.
Hang on a second. You can't just say that and then not.
Yeah, what's the gossip? Yeah.
That you
How
can't
about
do
how
that.
about
And then the next thing
about-
we know, there will be an article on the next web.
how about turn on next week in This Week in Asia, then we can talk more about this.
That's fun.
Tune
Okay.
in next week when.
And next time,
So,
let's do
John, you
video
have to come
because
in again.
I'm using my Hello Kitty phone and it's not on video. I'm kind of disappointed.
I'll just turn on the video. It'll be recorded. Come on, just turn it on.
It's on.
Yeah,
It's on.
fine.
I think I'm turned off by the U. So-
You're using a phone, are you?
Yeah, I'm
Smithy.
using one of these Hello Kitty Japanese Momo phone things that plug into your headphone jack, but it's like a old style headset. Yeah,
Ah, okay. Not actually a.
it makes me feel retro.
Okay, guys, I have to make a move. So
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
we all gotta go. That was great, John. Thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
Yep.
really appreciate
Cheers,
John.
guys. Thanks for having
John
me.
does a lot of good work at the next web slash
Yeah.
Asia, if I'm not mistaken. And
Yes.
and you can follow Jon Russell on Twitter and on a blog site that I am not involved in. Okay, sorry,
Okay.
just joking. And you can actually check out Bernard Leong at Leong CW. I think he has some new article in SG Entrepreneur. SGEIO. I think
Yeah.
you get used to. I think
The
you get used to
rebrand.
it.
Yes.
The rebranded SG Entrepreneurs, and you can get Dreampipe at No KPIs and follow
Twitter.
him at Dreampipe. Yeah, that's where you get most of his stuff. How about Global Things? Is it still
Yeah, it's a
active?
long story.
Okay, no
We'll
worries.
save that for a whole another week. It could consume half an episode.
Okay, and I'm at Cervantes, and my new site is this. Sorry, I'm getting this all mixed up.
Yeah, you say
Mix
so
up.
fast.
Next up Asia. I want to say when my new site is This Week in Asia, but which is true because I'm changing the theme on This Week in Asia soon, so that's
Okay.
going to be a new site soon. Okay, so thanks for listening to the show. Give us a rating in iTunes, give your comments and whatever. You can always reach us at This Week in Asia on Twitter. Thanks a lot.
Awesome.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
All right.
Later.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Bye.